Have you ever saved someone's life without them ever knowing your name? The bottle trembled in Catherine Carter's hands as she placed it on his desk, 40 floors above the city. While the powerful slept, the invisible moved. She wasn't supposed to touch his things, certainly not the CEO's pristine workspace. But something in his eyes that day had frightened her. It was the same vacant stare her mother had worn before collapsing 3 years earlier. Sterling Group's headquarters gleamed like a fortress of glass and ambition, its corridors humming with the quiet rhythm of the late-night cleaning crew. Catherine moved through the executive floor like a ghost, brown hair pulled back, eyes lowered whenever someone passed. At 28, she had mastered the art of being unseen, a necessary skill when you swept floors for people who noticed furniture before they noticed you. Michael Sterling's office stood apart, a corner monument to success, its windows swallowing the skyline. That night, at 9 p.m., he hunched over spreadsheets, his 5th coffee cup sitting empty beside him. Dinner had been forgotten hours ago, replaced by caffeine and sheer determination. Beneath the perfect suit and commanding presence, Catherine noticed things others didn't. The slight tremor in his fingers, faint reddish patches creeping up his neck, the subtle sweet scent on his breath, an odor that reminded her far too much of hospital rooms. His struggle with Class I obesity wasn't obvious to most, hidden beneath tailored suits and authority, but Catherine recognized the warning signs instantly. She had seen them for years while caring for her mother. "Mr. Sterling," she whispered, setting down the bottle. It wasn't filled with water, but with the same electrolyte solution she used to prepare for her mother's diabetes. "Maybe you should drink this instead of coffee tonight." He didn't look up. "Just mind your own job." The dismissal stung, but Catherine was used to it. Invisibility had taught her resilience. What he didn't see was how her hands, the same hands that had once measured insulin, doses and checked vital signs during her shortened nursing studies, carefully placed the bottle where he couldn't ignore it. Before her mother's illness had stolen her education. Catherine had learned something important. Sometimes the body speaks when the mouth refuses to. Down the hall, Margaret Ellis, the cleaning floor manager, watched silently. At 62, with silver-streaked hair and eyes shaped by Lhasa, husband taken by undiagnosed diabetes, she knew exactly what the gesture meant. "She's not minding her own job," Margaret murmured softly. "She's minding someone else's life." The next morning, Catherine hovered near the executive break room, pretending to dust the mahogany trim. Michael emerged from his meeting, moving with unusual steadiness. He paused, frowning at the empty bottle in his hand, the same one she had left the night before, then slipped it into his briefcase instead of throwing it away. His executive assistant, Elmira Davis, appeared beside him, her designer heels announcing each step. "Sir, the board is waiting. And there's been an anomaly in the overnight security footage. Someone accessed your office." Catherine froze, dustcloth suspended knitter. The shy woman who never drew attention to herself now stood on the edge of discovery. Michael glanced toward his office, then down at the bottle in his case. "Tell them I'll be 5 minutes late," he said, "and pull the personnel files for the nighttime cleaning." Staff. What neither of them knew was that Catherine's small act of kindness had already set a chain of events in motion, one that would crack the cold hierarchy of Sterling Group and possibly save a life hanging by threads thinner than anyone realized. Was this quiet cleaner with watchful eyes? What had she seen in the powerful CEO that everyone else had missed? The morning sun sliced through Sterling Group's high windows, illuminating dust motes Catherine would later chase away. Word spread quickly among the cleaning staff. Someone had crossed into the CEO's personal space. Suspicious glances followed. Catherine, as she wiped down surfaces on the 38th floor, quietly reassigned from the executive level without explanation. "It was you, wasn't it?" Margaret asked, joining her near the supply closet. Her weathered hands folded fresh towels with decades of practiced efficiency. Catherine's shoulders tightened. He looked like my mom did. Before, Margaret's eyes softened. People don't die from kindness, Catherine. They die when no one cares enough to look. Meanwhile, Michael Sterling sat alone reviewing personnel files. He stopped when he reached Catherine Carter, former nursing student. Dropped out to care for an ailing parent. Exemplary attendance. No complaints. He opened his drawer and touched the strange bottle again, remembering her whispered concern. Something about her eyes, earnest, worried, refused to leave his mind. "Sir," Elmira said from the doorway, flawless as ever in her tailored suit. "I've completed the investigation into the nighttime incident." He looked up. "It was the cleaner," she said. "Catherine Carter." Michael stared at the photograph clipped to Catherine's personnel file, his thoughts circling the same question. What exactly had she done? "Left an unauthorized beverage on your desk," Elmira said briskly. "I've already given her a verbal warning and reassigned her to the lower floors." Her smile tightened as her eyes flicked toward the bottle still sitting on his desk. "It isn't even one of our in-house brands. It looks unprofessional." Michael frowned. "You've already warned her?" "Of course," Elmira replied with confidence. "She needs to understand her place. She's a janitor, not a nurse." He nodded and dismissed her with a wave. Once alone, Michael opened his desk drawer and pulled the bottle back out, studying the label more closely this time. It wasn't water. It was an electrolyte solution. His doctor's words from his last physical echoed in his mind: stress, weight, family history. Risk factors he had buried beneath quarterly projections and shareholder demands. The next day, Catherine found herself reassigned to the 10th floor, far from the executive suite. As she emptied trash bins in the marketing department, her phone buzzed. A message from Margaret. "He was asking about you." Her heart stuttered. Discovery meant termination. She knew the rules. Still, something inside her pushed her forward. During her lunch break, Catherine pulled out her phone and composed a careful, anonymous email. Margaret had access to an internal directory, and Catherine used it to find Michael Sterling's personal address. "Mr. Sterling, your hands tremble. Your neck shows early signs of acanthosis nigricans. There is a sweetness to your breath that suggests elevated blood glucose. Please consult a doctor immediately. These are warning signs that should not be ignored." Someone who notices. She hit send before her courage could fail, and immediately regretted it. Corporate policy was clear. Unauthorized communication with executives meant termination. Catherine spent the rest of the afternoon in tense silence, half expecting security to appear at any moment. Instead, something unexpected happened. Michael Sterling read the email 3 times, a chill creeping up his spine. The details were disturbingly precise, things he had brushed off as exhaustion. His thoughts jumped to Catherine's concerned eyes, then to the framed photo on his desk. His father, dead of a heart attack at 50-2. Michael was 36. "Elmira," he called when she appeared. He said quietly, "Cancel my afternoon." "But sir," "The investor call. Reschedule it." His tone left no room for argument. 3 hours later, Michael sat in his doctor's office, staring at the results of rushed tests. Pre-diabetes, early cardiac strain. A path leading exactly where his father's had ended. "You're lucky," the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. "We caught this early enough to manage it with lifestyle changes. Your obesity puts you at higher risk, but we have effective interventions now. Had you kept pushing yourself..." He paused. "Executives like you often miss the warning signs until it's critical." Michael thought of the anonymous email, of Catherine's careful placement of the electrolyte drink. What if someone hadn't noticed? He asked quietly, "Someone who replaced my coffee with electrolytes." The doctor looked surprised. "That person may have prevented an acute episode. With your levels and stress, Severe dehydration could have triggered a dangerous cascade. Without that electrolyte hydration, you might have collapsed that very night. He studied Michael's face. That small intervention bought you valuable time. That evening, Michael sat alone in his expansive penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly below. For the first time in years, his thoughts weren't on market share or projections, but on a shy cleaner who had seen what no one else bothered to notice. What made someone risk their job for a man who barely acknowledged her existence? As his world quietly began to shift, neither Michael nor Catherine realized how closely their lives were now moving toward collision, or that the true test of character was still ahead. Morning arrived with the soft ping of an urgent email. Catherine froze as she read the subject line, "All staff, mandatory meeting." 9 a.m. today. Her stomach twisted. Someone had traced the anonymous email. She was certain of it. Margaret found her in the break room, Catherine clutching her uniform with trembling hands. "I'm going to be fired, aren't I?" she whispered. Margaret pressed a cup of ginger tea into her hands. "You might lose your job," she said gently, "but don't lose faith in doing what's right." Tears filled Catherine's eyes. If someone had noticed your husband sooner, he'd still be here, wouldn't he? "Yes," Margaret answered softly, grief still lingering years later. "And today, you're doing what I wish I had done." The company auditorium filled quickly with hundreds of employees. Catherine slipped into the back row, making herself as small as possible. Then Michael Sterling strode onto the stage. The room fell silent, and Catherine noticed immediately. His complexion looked healthier now, his movements more deliberate. He'd seen a doctor. "I've called you all here today for a matter of company-wide importance," Michael began, slowly scanning the crowded auditorium. Sterling Group was founded on the principle of health innovation. And yet, somewhere along the way, we created a culture that glorifies burnout and ignores basic well-being. Murmurs rippled through the room. This was not the announcement anyone had expected. "Yesterday," Michael continued, "I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes and early-stage heart strain conditions that, left untreated, would have taken me down the same path that claimed my father's life." The room went still. Executives didn't admit weakness. It was an unspoken rule. "Someone in this room noticed symptoms I was ignoring," he said. "Someone had the courage to act when others chose to look away." His eyes searched the crowd. "I want to know who replaced the bottle on my desk last week. Who sent the anonymous email that likely saved my life?" Silence blanketed the auditorium. Catherine felt her heartbeat pounding in her throat. Amira rose from her seat in the front row. "Sir, with all due respect, this is hardly appropriate." "I asked a question, Ms. Davis," Michael cut in sharply. His voice carried an edge that silenced her instantly. Catherine's legs felt disconnected from her body as she slowly stood. Hundreds of heads turned. "It was me," she said, her voice barely audible from the back of the room. "I'm sorry. I just thought you needed water more than coffee." Michael's eyes locked onto hers across the distance. "You don't need to apologize," he said. "You saved my life." Whispers exploded across the room as he gestured for her to come forward. Each step felt like walking through deep water, the weight of every stare pressing down on her. "Catherine Carter worked in healthcare before joining our cleaning staff." Michael addressed the audience. "She recognized warning signs that our own corporate health program missed. That I missed." He turned toward Elmira, signs that some people actively tried to hide. Elmira blanched. "I was protecting the company's image." "You deleted a medical alert that could have prevented a crisis," Michael said coldly. "Clean out your desk. Security will escort you out." As Elmira stormed off the stage, Michael turned back to Catherine. "Would you stay after the meeting?" he asked gently. "I'd like to speak with you privately." The meeting ended with announcements about a new company-wide wellness initiative. As the auditorium emptied, Catherine remained seated, her heart hammering. Michael approached her, stopping at a respectful distance. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "You risked your job for someone who didn't even see you." "I could not see it," Catherine replied simply. "My mother had the same symptoms before her diabetes crisis. I dropped out of nursing school to care for her." Something shifted in Michael's expression. "You notice what no one else does," he said quietly. "I've gone my whole life without really seeing myself until you looked at me." A tear slid down Catherine's cheek. Not from fear or shame, but from the powerful feeling of finally being seen. Soft morning light filled the empty auditorium, painting the space in warm gold. In that quiet moment of recognition, something changed between the invisible cleaner and the powerful CEO. Neither of them yet knew the resistance they would face or the painful truths about Sterling Group's foundations that were about to surface. As walls began to crack, who else would be exposed by simple human kindness? 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of change. Catherine now carried a new title, Health and Wellness Coordinator, and an office on the 39th floor. Just below the executive suite, the whispers followed her everywhere. She slept her way to the top. A charity case, Michael's pet project. Every step through the polished corridors felt like walking on broken glass. Michael, meanwhile, immersed himself fully in the Healthy CEO initiative, publicly sharing his diagnosis and recovery plan. Sterling Group's stock wavered at first, then strengthened as investors recognized the authenticity behind the company's renewed health tech focus. Behind closed doors, however, the board remained divided. "This is a PR stunt gone too far," said Warren Phillips, head of the board, during a private session. "Promoting a janitor? What's next? Profit sharing with the parking attendants?" Michael remained calm. Catherine identified critical health indicators that our own medical staff missed. "She represents the human insight our technology lacks." "Speaking of technology," Warren said, sliding a folder across the table, "these are the quarterly projections for the diabetes monitoring system you delayed. That delay is costing us millions." Michael opened the file, scanning the data. "These accuracy rates are still unacceptable," he said firmly. "And the real battle was only beginning. I won't release a product that gives false readings." Michael said firmly, "We've met industry standards." Warren insisted. "Industry standards didn't catch my condition," Michael shot back. Catherine did. Later that afternoon, Catherine sat across from Michael in his office, reviewing employee wellness surveys. The formality between them had softened, but an invisible line still existed. He was the CEO. She was the former cleaner learning how to take up space she'd never been allowed to occupy before. "Participation is lower than expected," she noted. "People don't trust that their health information won't affect their standing." Michael nodded. "Trust has to be earned. We're pushing against years of corporate culture." A notification flashed on his screen. His expression darkened as he read it. "Is everything okay?" Catherine asked. "Just board politics," he replied, closing the screen. "How's your mother doing with the new care arrangement?" he asked. Catherine smiled. "The company's extended family benefits now cover her home health care. It's changed everything. She's getting stronger, and I can finally focus without constant worry." Their conversation was interrupted when Margaret stepped in, now head of the expanded cleaning services department. Her usual calm was shaken. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this." She placed a tablet between them, displaying an internal memo. "It was in the archive I was asked to digitize," she explained. The document, dated 3 years earlier, detailed testing results for Sterling Group's flagship diabetes monitoring system. Red-flagged accuracy issues, the same ones Michael had delayed the product launch to address, had been documented. And then buried. "The board knew," Michael said hollowly. "They knew and went ahead anyway." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. "This system, This is what our regional hospital uses. My mother's care depended on these readings. Michael met her eyes as the realization struck them both. Your mother's crisis, the one that forced you out of nursing school, could have been prevented with accurate readings. Catherine whispered, the pieces falling into place. Her medication would have been adjusted sooner. The silence that followed carried the weight of lives altered by profit margins and cut corners, decisions made in this very office. Perhaps even at the same desk where Catherine had once placed a life-saving bottle of electrolytes. Michael stood abruptly. I need both of you to tell no one about this yet. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. What are you going to do? Margaret asked. His expression hardened. What Catherine did for me. I'm going to see what others chose to ignore. The emergency board meeting convened at sunset. 12 members sat around the polished table, irritation evident over the last-minute summons. Michael entered last, followed, unexpectedly, by Catherine and Margaret. What are they doing here? Warren demanded. They're bearing witness, Michael said calmly, distributing copies of the buried report. 3 years ago, this company knowingly released a faulty medical device. Today, we begin making amends. Warren's face flushed. This is absurd. We met every legal requirement. My father founded this company to save lives, Michael cut in, his voice rising. After his brother died from undiagnosed diabetes, he wanted technology that cared when humans missed the signs. What happened to that mission? We adapted to market realities, Warren snapped. Your father's idealism nearly bankrupted us. We made necessary compromises. Compromises like accuracy for profit? Catherine spoke up, her voice steady despite the intimidating room. Those compromises cost real people their health. People like my mother. Warren sneered. And what would you know about business decisions, Miss Carter? Nothing, she admitted. But I know what it looks like when someone's glucose crashes with no warning. I know the human cost, not quarterly projections. Michael placed both hands flat on the table. Effective immediately, we are recalling every monitoring system. We're establishing a victim compensation fund, and we're rebuilding from the ground up. You can't do this unilaterally, Warren sputtered. The board won't allow it. Actually, Michael said, sliding another document forward, my father's founding articles grant me final authority on matters of product safety. I'm exercising that authority now. The room erupted threats of resignation. Lawsuits, stock collapse, through it all. Catherine stood silently, watching powerful faces twist with a fear she knew well. The fear of losing status, security, identity. When the storm finally subsided, only 4 board members remained, including Michael. The rest walked out, promising legal consequences. We may have just dismantled the company, one remaining member said quietly. Michael looked at Catherine, then at Margaret. No, he said. We just remembered what it was built for. That evening, as news broke and Sterling Group's stock plunged, Catherine and Michael stood together at the office window, watching the city lights come alive. No longer CEO and cleaner, just 2 people bound by uncommon courage. The courage to truly see. And to be seen. Sometimes, the greatest acts of leadership look like rebellion. And the deepest healing begins with necessary destruction. As Sterling Group entered its darkest hour, the unexpected alliance between Michael and Catherine was tested in ways neither could have imagined. Could a company built on profit be rebuilt on compassion? And what would it cost those brave enough to try? The headlines blazed for weeks. Sterling Group recall shocks market health. Tech giants' self-inflicted wound, stock values plummeted. Lawsuits piled up. The once sleek headquarters suddenly felt far too large for the skeleton crew that remained. Michael converted the vacant 38th floor into a claim center, where affected patients could seek answers and compensation. Catherine oversaw the operation. Her nursing background and her personal history guided a response that prioritized healing over legal maneuvering. "The lawyers think we're insane," Michael said one evening, loosening his tie as they reviewed the day's claims. Months earlier, such casualness would have been unthinkable. Now his suit jacket stayed in the closet more often than not, and employees had grown used to seeing him in rolled-up sleeves, a visible sign of his ongoing lifestyle changes. Catherine smiled faintly. "But the patient testimonials today. Did you see their faces when we admitted fault instead of denying it?" Michael nodded, remembering the elderly man who had wept when told his medical expenses would be covered retroactively. "It's the right thing," he said, "even if it isn't the profitable thing." Beyond the glass walls of the conference room, Margaret directed a team organizing patient files. At 62, she had found unexpected purpose as patient advocacy director. Her quiet wisdom and lived experience with loss making her invaluable to families. Navigating medical bureaucracy. "Your mother's latest results came in," Michael said, sliding a folder across the table. "Her new endocrinologist is very pleased with her progress." Catherine traced the improved numbers with her fingers tangible. Proof that proper care and accurate monitoring could undo years of damage. "She asked about you again," Michael added. "Says she wants to meet the man who gave her daughter back her confidence." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind born of shared purpose, not shared rank. Whatever was growing between them remained undefined, both of them keenly aware of the power dynamics they were still carefully navigating. Moment was broken by a soft knock. A young developer from the downsized R&D department stood nervously in the doorway. "Mr. Sterling, we've completed the accuracy testing on the prototype. It's not good." Michael motioned for him to continue. "We've been so focused on the recall that development stalled. We're at least 18 months away from a viable replacement." Catherine watched the weight settle onto Michael's shoulders. The company could survive the recall or the delay, but not both. Without a product, the victim compensation fund would eventually run dry. "Thank you for being honest," Michael said. "Get some rest. We'll figure this out." After the developer left, Michael moved to the window, his silhouette stark against the darkening sky. "We might not survive this," he said quietly. Catherine joined him, keeping a professional distance despite the instinct to offer comfort. "Maybe Sterling Group as it was doesn't survive," she said, "but something better could." He turned toward her, city lights reflected in his eyes. "When did you become such an optimist?" "When someone finally saw me," she replied simply. "It changes how you see everything else." That night, Catherine couldn't sleep. The company's crisis turned endlessly in her mind until a memory surfaced, her mother's early diabetes journal. From before they could afford proper monitoring. An idea began to take shape. The next morning, Catherine arrived early, a worn notebook in hand. Michael was already in his office, reviewing severance packages for yet another department facing cuts. "What if the solution isn't more technology?" she said without preamble, "but better listening?" Michael looked up, confused. She opened the journal. "Before we had monitoring equipment, we tracked subtle physical changes, skin tone, fatigue, emotional shifts alongside basic readings. We noticed patterns machines missed." "A hybrid approach," Michael said slowly, understanding dawning. "Human observation enhanced by technology, not replaced by it." "Exactly," Catherine said. "What if Sterling's future isn't just better devices, but teaching people to notice what I noticed in you? An approach rooted in human care, supported by technological precision." Years later, snow fell softly outside the windows of Sterling Group's modest new headquarters, a renovated wing of the original building where Michael's father had launched the company 30 years earlier. Inside, warm light filled a gathering of employees. celebrating the official adoption of their new monitoring framework by the nation's largest hospital system. The company that had nearly collapsed now thrived with a renewed mission, integrating human care with technological precision. Market analysts called it a miracle turnaround. Those who lived through it called it something simpler, a return to purpose. Margaret Ellis, her silver hair elegantly styled for the occasion, raised a glass. To second chances, Margaret announced to the small gathering, her eyes finding Catherine in the crowd. And to those who help us see them. The group echoed the toast just as Michael stepped in from a final investor call, his expression bright with barely contained news. Catherine moved instinctively to his side. Their professional partnership had evolved into a quiet choreography, shared instincts, complementary strengths, and ease neither of them questioned anymore. "It's official," Michael said, his voice carrying across the room. "The FDA has fast-tracked approval based on the pilot results. The water project goes nationwide next quarter." Applause erupted. Catherine felt a hand rest on her shoulder. She turned to see her mother, standing strong after a year of proper treatment, her eyes shining with pride. "You did this," her mother whispered. Catherine shook her head gently. "We all did." As the celebration continued, Michael guided Catherine toward the small balcony overlooking the original Sterling laboratory. Snow gathered along the railing as they stepped outside, the quiet wrapping around them. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small blue box from his pocket. "It's been exactly 1 year since the company relaunch." Inside lay a crystal water bottle, elegant in its simplicity, etched with a single line, "Sometimes kindness is the most precise science." The board wanted something grander, Michael admitted, suddenly awkward in a way the confident CEO rarely was. But this felt truer. Catherine held the bottle, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Lives changed, a company transformed. Two people who had found each other across divisions of power and position that once felt impossible to cross. "I never replaced your water to change the company," she said softly. "I just couldn't walk past someone who was suffering when I knew how to help." Michael nodded, snow settling into his dark hair. "That's why it worked. Authentic care can't be strategized or marketed. It can only be practiced." He hesitated, then added, "The way you taught me to practice it." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching snowflakes spiral through the golden light spilling from the windows. The professional boundaries they had once guarded so carefully had slowly softened, first into respect, then friendship, and finally into something deeper, shaped by shared purpose and quiet moments of vulnerability. "The doctors say I'm officially in remission," Michael said at last. "No signs of prediabetes. My obesity risk factors are under control. Cardiac function is normal." "I know," Catherine replied with a small smile. "I read your chart yesterday." He laughed, warm and unguarded in the cold air. "Of course you did." Inside, the celebration continued, but neither of them rushed back. Something unspoken had been growing for months, something they both approached with care, understanding that real connection couldn't be rushed or manufactured. "Catherine," Michael said, his voice different now, "I've been thinking about what comes next. For the company. For the project. For us." She met his gaze steadily. "What do you see?" "A future where we keep building something meaningful together," he said quietly. "If that's what you want too." Catherine thought of the journey that had brought her here, from a shy woman who kept her eyes down to a respected healthcare innovator. From cleaning offices in silence to advising hospital boards. She thought of the man in front of her, no longer just a symbol of corporate power, but someone shaped by humility and conviction. "I'd like that," she said simply. Behind them, Margaret appeared in the doorway, smiling knowingly before speaking. "They're asking for both of you inside." The governor's on the line about expanding the water project to rural clinics. As they turned back toward the room, Michael's hand found Catherine's, their fingers intertwining with the natural ease of two people who had truly learned to see one another, not CEO and employee, not savior and saved, but partners in the truest sense, each made better by the simple, revolutionary act of paying attention.